emmere agiwa bazadde be. Saani kigaanye kituufu n'ate yabagambanga mu ngeri embi nti mbu aleke emmere, aleke ssente z'emmere, naye ate nze sifumba mmere kukola ki kumuwa. Kati ye nga agenda ew'abakadde be n'abagamba nti mujje musime emmere oba mujje munone emmere.
Well, a very good morning to you. I hope everyone has grabbed a bite. And perhaps to start off the second segment of this meeting is understanding the state of HIV/AIDS in Uganda, as well as the human rights today. So I want to invite Councillor David Kabanda to give us a presentation on the state of human rights violations in context of HIV, TB. Councillor David Kabanda, you're welcome. We want to say once again a special thank you to all of those watching us online. Thank you very much for staying with us. Fully packed program. Tell a friend to join the Zoom link, which we have shared extensively. We'll be able to pick your views and comments in the Q&A session, and then we can be able to address them later on this program. Let's now invite Councillor David Kabanda to make his presentation. You're welcome, Councillor.
Thank you so much, Solomon. I want to thank UGANET for having organized this high-level dialogue, national dialogue. I'm going to be presenting our findings on the consultancy that we have carried out for UGANET on the state of human rights violations against persons living with HIV and AIDS and TB in Uganda. Specifically, we are also looking at gender-based violence, PHIV, but also the COVID-19 and how it has affected people. Someone should help out with this remote. Maybe it has no battery. Okay. What was the general objective? We set out to identify and assess and document human rights violations. And those were our specific objectives. Okay, and this is the methodology. The study took both qualitative and quantitative methods, and we reached out to 2,500 people as respondents, and we conducted interviews in all the 5 regions of Uganda. We went to northern, western Nile, West Nile, central, western and eastern regions of Uganda. And for these, we specifically went to 10 districts. These included Adjumani, Kitigumu, Gulu, Busia, Mbale, Mbalala, Bushenyi, Nakasongola, Arua, and Rakai. These were the research domains. We specifically were looking out to find out how is the right to access to medicines and other health services being violated. Then the right to information, because we understand that the right to information is key in response to HIV pandemic. Then the right to freedom from stigma and discrimination, sexual and gender-based violence, then violations specific to TB patients. Then we also assessed COVID-19, and then the issue of access to food. Then we looked at government omissions, and the right to redress. Um, when we interviewed the respondents on the right to access to HIV medicines, I want to report to the people here that in the group that we assessed, 11% 0.2 of the people whom we interviewed, sorry? First do it. It is not moving. Maybe you can do it yourself. I'm going to be using my laptop. I think the pointer has issues. 11.2% of the respondents we interviewed faced issues of stockouts at the facility. This meant that they've gone to the facility to get drugs and there were no drugs. But 88.1% indicated that they have never had stockouts. And for this, we found out that Uganda Cares is really helping out a lot in terms of, because many people were indicating that Uganda Cares is making it possible for them to get drugs. The ARVs are always available. These are some of the responses we got, but many of the people were indicating that they are not getting Septrin, yet they need it. Of the people we interviewed, 1.8% had gone to the facility and missed refills. Like this male respondent of 59 years in Mbale indicated that sometimes you go to the facility and you can't get the refills. So that one is a violation of the people's access to medicines. Then when we assess the right of persons living with HIV access to HIV services and information, it was shocking to find that 99% of the respondents did not know the name of the ARVs they were taking. Most of them could only recognize them by color, and others, for example, in Gulu, some respondents kept referring to a certain type of ARV as Dorothea. So this is very, this is a violation. You cannot treat people with substances that they cannot know. So it is very important that for purposes of adherence and proper response in HIV programming, also the patients or the persons living with HIV must be told the kind of medicine that they are taking. 13.8 of the respondents reported that health workers had not told them about side effects that would arise from taking ARVs. And we think this is also part of the violations that these people face because everyone must be told if a drug I'm taking will cause side effects or not. Then when we assess the right to freedom from stigma and discrimination, the Northern region registered highest cases at 30%. The respondents indicated that they are suffering stigma and discrimination associated to the status, to their status. Colleagues, we know stemming from even in-house or family members talking ill about each other's status. So there is a lot of discrimination within the communities, and many persons living with HIV are continuously being discriminated. In Western region, also had a highest level of non-disclosure. So the stigma and discrimination is fueling non-disclosure, and we think many people, of course, fear the discrimination that comes with the disclosure. 97% of the schools countrywide do not have HIV policy. I think some of the interventions should also go into this because some of the respondents, some of the youth that we interviewed indicated that teachers abuse them, name calling, going to the assembly, and also advising other children to, uh, to, 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 to abandon them. I think in this age and era, it is fascinating and frustrating to find that a given school or school leaders or teachers, who, by the way, may also not know their status, come up and, discriminate children who have HIV and also encourage other pupils and students to discriminate them. 98.2% of the respondents in formal employment do not have an HIV policy, at least those that we reached out. There must be some effort to make sure that every employer must have an HIV as a tool of making it known to them. And 32% face stigma at home from family members. We also found out that 4% have been chased away from homes. It is really disheartening to find that some people are being chased away even from their homes when other people get to know that they are HIV positive. And when we did the assessment, 2.9 use separate household utensils, because in the questionnaire, we were asking them to even explain how they experienced this kind of discrimination. And 3.4 told us that they are isolated and are blamed by family members. 7.7 told us that they've been abused, insulted by community members, and 47.6 have faced gossip about their status in the community. This may sound as usual, but these numbers keep changing. Then we interrogated sexual and gender-based violence, and we found out that women are the main victims of GBV countrywide. We found out that 3.3% reported to have been physically beaten by their spouses. Immediately, they told them that they are HIV positive. And 2.1 were also just 170.2% have been abused or insulted, and 82.6 have never reported the violations to any authority. And that, as I will be showing you in the last slides, that also
from based on the court record and the information available to us from police station. And then the whole question of privacy and confidentiality of HIV positive persons. We are all not the same. In an ideal world, we would all love to be able to confidently speak about the HIV positive status. In an ideal world, we would all want to be like Reverend Gideon, Dr. Watiti, but the environment clearly makes it difficult. These laws that we are talking about make it difficult. So the question that arises, many HIV positive persons complain about the disregard of their right to privacy and confidentiality. If somebody is not ready to go public about their HIV positive status, why should they be tested against us, disclosed to the police, disclosed to the media, and to all and sundry? Is that fair? Is that right? Is it just? That is a significant concern that again arises from these laws regarding the HIV positive status, which are criminalizing individuals. It becomes difficult to safeguard the right to privacy and confidentiality of HIV positive persons who do not want to go public about this status. But the moment they are accused of having committed an offense, they are mandatorily subjected to these tests. And that becomes a question of invasion of their privacy and confidentiality. In fact, almost 80% before the law. We are all supposed to be equal before the law. But now you have these kinds of situations and regulations that are passed that violate equal treatment of all before the law. We have briefly gone through the challenges that are faced by persons living with HIV. Those who are in prison, we see a serious problem in access to medication and a balanced diet. It remains a challenge. Hope somebody here can be inspired to think about prison outreach for persons living with HIV. It's a serious, there's a serious gap that requires interventions. Stigma and discrimination for HIV positive persons who are unfortunate to be tried in courts of law and found guilty.
You want to charge?
When they go to prison, the situation doesn't change. Even in prison, the stigma and discrimination itself poses another problem, even within prison. And then from the law enforcement point of view, their issues were to do with the suspects not being cooperative. And my response to them, of course, has always been that yes, in this kind of environment, if you arrest me and you accuse me of having HIV to another person, don't expect me to be cooperative. If you ask me for my HIV results, because the law is making it an aggravating factor. If you can't prove that I'm HIV positive, I get arrested, I'm charged with a lesser offense. So why should I cooperate with you so that I can be charged with a more serious offense? It wouldn't make sense.
Really?
Inordinate delay by complainants in reporting cases to the police. Victims choosing through LC courts and family meetings. Accused persons refusing to disclose their HIV status. I've explained why I think that is
Not really. That's
human nature and it's something that can be understood. We also looked at the challenges posed by the prisons and then the courts of law. And lastly, we try to do a comparative analysis with other countries. And what is key that we need to understand as a gist of this study is that very few countries, in fact, only 75 countries have HIV-specific laws. 36 European countries, 33 states in the United States, and then 25 African countries. But our case, from countries, use the general criminal law provisions. Why the general criminal law, now like section 171 of the penal code, fine, it is big in Uganda now. It's used to target HIV positive persons and then people violating lockdown restrictions. But the danger of when you have an HIV specific law, it adds on the stigma, discrimination, and also makes it difficult for people to confidently talk about their HIV status and to access treatment. And therefore, globally, the standard is if there are any criminal offenses committed by HIV positive persons, yes, they are not above the law. They are also the same as anyone else. They are not above the law. But they should be treated with a general criminal law and not creating specific laws targeting HIV positive persons. The general criminal law should always be adequate for everybody. And that's the conclusion and recommendation of our study. It's quite wide. I was just trying to break it down. So the limited time available. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jude Biomkama. Thank you for that presentation. Interesting thoughts that are coming through here from both two lawyers, and I think those are going to form the very basis of our conversation. We have about 35 minutes to close up.
Getting in touch closer to the communities that were never allowed to move, with no public transport, with no access to any justice systems or health systems. We had to come up with a call center that managed to reach most of the people out there in the country. And through our call center, we were able to respond to quite a number of cases, and we have sheltered quite a number of women. And briefly, just to the picture of what we had the categories that really suffered most were the teenagers between 13 and 19 years who were sexually abused. And then we also had the married women, intimate partner violence, and the women who were living like the married, the cohabiting ones, who were beaten up and badly injured by their partners. We also had the forgotten category of young girls who are commonly known as maids or the house helps, who were thrown out of these homes, abused by the men in the homes that had been abandoned by the wives due to the violences that were going on in those homes. And like most of the previous speakers have already said, people living with HIV were not in any way safe, and those that had TB, it was a situation worsened by the COVID lockdown. And then also we had expectant mothers who could not reach hospitals, who could not get access to antenatal care, and the young children who were sexually abused by those who would be protecting them in the homes. We had in our shelter home, you've been part of our system. We've actually housed a total of 60 women from the 2nd of May when the shelter was opened to date. A total number of 60 women have been accommodated, and we've provided counseling, we've provided skills for them, and we've also been able to take them through a number of wellness activities that have improved their lives. We've been able to support a total number of 10 women who have not been sheltered in the house but have been counseled through our system, and a total of 19 teenagers. And out of these 19 teenagers, we have one very interesting case of a 19-year-old who was impregnated by her biological father, and at the time when UGANET came through, she was contemplating on aborting a 5-month-old pregnancy, and we all know how dangerous that can be. And then we also had 3 young girls who were sexually abused by their biological father, who happens to be a big name in the country, a sheikh, and heading one of the big mosques around. And we also had 6 minors who were defiled by close relatives, and we had to go through with them, and we also managed to take care of 36 6 children who came along with their mothers during the lockdown.
Wow,
Yes.
interesting. Can I just ask the people in this tent to clap for UGANET? I think before you reach the wellness center, you may not understand what Rona is saying, but we have a video, and Immaculate, if you can help me identify one of the videos, especially for the lady from Zimbabwe. We'll be airing that video shortly for you to see what UGANET did during this time. I have had an opportunity of being there. So what UGANET did is they got a big home, furnished it fully, and kept 60 plus women who were there, who were then beaten, battered, and broken. They were rehabilitated during that period, fed with their children, cancelled, and UGANET is taking on some legal suits for the people who violated their rights. Let's clap for them again. And that goes to the very core of UGANET. And thank you, Dora, for leading that team. Thanks, Rona. I'll come back to you for you to speak more about this after we've also watched that video. So, Fiona, you are a person who has been, who's been having tuberculosis. And you say that you were treated as an outcast in one of your submissions. Talk to us more about how your rights were abused during the COVID-19 pandemic, Fiona. Ogenda kukyusa olulimi tewali buzibu. Kale oba osemberere microphone tukulire bulungi. Ndowooza osemberere mu microphone bakuwulire bulungi.
Nebangamba nina obulwadde bwa TB kati olwamaliriza ne bampa kansoli nenzikiriza okunywa eddagala nawusanti nafuna amaanyi then neebaza eri omukyalo nampa that courage and most of the people around surrounded me baali bansosola nga bagamba temuyiteeyo awo mu maka waliwo omuwala mulwadde wa TB bagoba abaana abantu abasinga gye tuyita ffenna nga family batugoba ne batandika okulozinga enkuba ezaali zisinga okuyitirirwa ne tubeerawo nga tetwetegeera naye omukyalo omu yajja gyendi n'aŋŋamba no tofaayo totya nembeerawo yatandika nemunyumizaako situation gye tulimu mu area gye twalimu yagendayo n'ayogera nabo n'abagamba bannaye TB bulwadde naye buwona babutwitinga nemuvaawo temumugoba musinga agenda olaba nga kyemberi mu bantu yajja nnungi abantu ne batandika okunsembeza ne batandika okusembeza famire yaffe bannaye neebaza bagane ku bantu be mwatuweereza batukozemu omulimu olw'ekitongole kino kirungi ne USAID
Webale nnyo Fiona. Njagala okwongerako nti naliko mu district emu, maybe I should go back to English. I happened to be in one of the districts, and I was documenting how the village health teams were chasing after people who had TB. And their justification was that they needed to ensure that they take their medication. So they would literally, so we went on a chase. I remember we were filming the whole chase. Kuita mu bitooke, uyo mumwanyi, banange uyo mukwata. And then eventually, you take your medicine, then they tick that you've taken your medicine. The day you don't, you are chased and then, taken to the LC for you to answer why you have not been taking your medicine. So there's some human rights issues, and people would say maybe it's justified for the people to take their medicine so that they don't spread the tuberculosis, but there's also human rights violations. And I think that that story opened up, many people to start thinking about the rights of people living with tuberculosis. But tuberculosis, like you say, can be cured. Letitia, talk to us about your story, your experience during COVID-19 lockdown.
Yeah, my experience during the lockdown as a sex worker. First and foremost, I want to bring to everyone's attention, we are not promoting sex work, but rather making it a better job for people who still believe in it and can, help them sustain their lives.
Yeah.
Sex work has faced a lot of problems during the COVID-19. We all know when the lockdown had just begun, the president, we were among the first people that he put in a total century of lockdown. Until to date, he has never come back to speak about sex workers. And we are still wondering what to do next, where can we go, how can we do this, and how can we better our lives. Because we have families who support, we even do educate ourselves. We do a lot of things through our job, and that is why we call upon everyone to recognize sex work as work. Furthermore, there are a lot of violations that have happened. Recently, we just had a case of a sex worker. She just served out to her customer, and then when the customer realized that she had more money, as she was walking out of the lodge, the customer beat her badly and she had to lose her eye. We have been nursing her at Mulago Hospital. A lot of expenses have been taken down, and we are looking out. When we went to the police to report this case, the police told us she's a sex worker and that is what has to be happening to her. So violations of human rights are centered, but then when we come to sex workers, it is beyond. Earlier on, Mr. Kabanda, when he was presenting, he really showed out the research they did, that sex workers do not even go to police to report because we are not heard. Our voices are just heard and put backwards. We are left behind. But in actual sense, we are human, regardless of the job we do. We are human beings, and we all know that human rights are for everyone who is living on this planet, and more so in our country, Uganda. But you realize that even the laws and policies that are out there are criminalizing us. You find out that many of the policies and laws coming out on board are criminalizing sex workers. So this all comes back to us, even us as CSOs, as we are implementing our activities. There are sometimes and somewhere that we do not ever reach because some of the partnerships that we want to build cannot be supported to our work. And we do not provide rehabilitation services for sex workers. Sex work is a choice, not a force. And we do not also partner with organizations that are going to be in position to rehabilitate us. We rather look for skills. We only need organizations that are going to provide us skills. So you find out that our violations among us are very many, and we are not heard. Though I want to recognize the efforts that different CSOs and different law firms have put ahead of us to support us. When you look at the sex party that happened in Chireka, only women were put out. Only our faces were put out. Were we enjoying alone that party? Ask yourself that question. Where did the men go?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take these things so much serious. Because at the end of the day, we are violating someone's rights. And at the end of the day, we are all human beings. At the sex party, we realized that only women's faces were shown. And you really saw how media was over it. Only women. So we have been in court, up and down, but I want to thank the people that have stood with us. At least we have 7, or out of the 13 women that were taken to court, at least 7 have been given bail and they are out. Thank you so much for the support that you're always giving back. Furthermore, Saranje, we have had a lot of, many of the sex workers do not have where to stay. Because of the COVID-19 impacts, they have not been working, so they have been put out of their houses. And this has brought a lot of rape and arrest cases, hence adding to the high prevalence new infection rates in the country. And we need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do? And when you look at Dr. Biamugisha's report, as he was addressing us earlier today, he gave out a point whereby we, the key population, are having the HIV high prevalence rate.
Yeah.
But some of these issues can be followed up, like the issues of rape, arrests. And moreover, the policemen that are arresting us are the ones using us at a certain point. And they do not also know their statuses. So we need to check in ourselves and see how can we pave way forwards to protect sex workers regardless of our job.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thanks, Fiona, for your Letitia. Thank you for your submissions. Let me bring in Henry Muchili here. Talk to us about the experience during COVID-19.
My name is Henry Muchili, the Executive Director of General Sun Foundation, that is COSIF Uganda. It's an LGBT organization in Uganda. During the pandemic, it became more fundamental. Why? That who were in prison. My organization runs a shelter where we give shelter to the most vulnerable LGBT members who are tested from their homes due to their sexual orientation, and those ones who are HIV positive and they are discriminated in the community. We also have a health clinic where we give health services to LGBT members and the general community. But now here, the police raided our shelter during the pandemic, and we were 20 members. There were 20 members. Then they called me. They had to call me that the members have been arrested. But we're staying in Shengira by then. They came in. They also, I think you saw the video where Hajishimba came in and started beating everybody who was there. That why. So we are beaten. Even me, I was called and I was added in. They called me. They asked me, who are you? I told them that I'm the executive director. They said that you're under arrest. So I was also put down. I was beaten because of my sexual orientation. You see that I told them that why have you raided us? They said that just because you are gay. But these people, remember, the president had just said that nobody had just looked at the transport system. We had already carried out we had an SMC program that had just taken a few days, and some of the members were in our clinic and some were in the shelter. So these people, when they came, they got the people from the shelter, from the clinic, and they also added them to the shelter. They are circumcised. So these people were beaten seriously. Then after there, Chimba were taken to prison. We were taken to police like slaves. He asked for ropes and they tied us. They call it a shameful walk from the shelter to police. They are boxing us, reaching to police. We are still taken to Chengira, Nzanji Magistrate Court 1, where they charged us. Then they diverted the case from homosexuality to COVID-19. Now I wondered, what came to my mind was, how can you change? These people are staying in a home which they called theirs, and now they say that they are they are charged because they defied presidential directives. That their home which they called theirs, they are safe there. So reaching in the prison, we faced it all. Members were beaten, discriminated, and some were banned because of their sexual orientation. We are banned. We are denied access to lawyers, but eventually our lawyers came in through UGANET'S, and we seek justice. But some members of mine were denied medicine who were positive because we run a CDDP where the LGBT members come and get drugs from our clinic. Some members were denied service, food. We could eat rotten food, rotten beans which we could eat like today lunch. They are cooked yesterday at 8. Food was uncooked. Balance that was not people. No, I had my member. I was making myself I was following up with my members to see that they are addicted on drugs. Some of them came out of prison. For the 50 days we spent in prison, when some people's viral loads were high, and right now so that's what faced during the pandemic.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, team, for making these submissions. I was wondering if Dora, we could get reactions from the, from the team here, and then we get into our second panel. The fact that we have about 15 more, 20 minutes to close up. Okay, cool. Do we have feedback from the a reaction from the presentations that are made, but also the experience of people here from the audience here and also the online audience? Okay, we have three. Can someone help me with the movable microphone, please? Okay, yeah, sorry. You have a mic on every table. So please make your submission as brief as you can, and then we'll get started with your introductions first.
Making this wonderful dialogue come up with experiences of people and all that. My name is Christ Mugulu. I work with and for the Uganda Land Positive as the executive director. What I'm hearing from this afternoon's discussion is that as a nation, we've got a lot to play around with as far as fighting HIV. Number one, we've got to eliminate stigma. What we are hearing from the panelists is that as a country, we still have a lot of stigma. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of denial, there's a lot of discrimination, there's a lot of inaction and deception. What we get from the panelists is that throughout all the clusters, whether it be sex workers, whether it be people patients, whether it be young girls, adolescent girls, and young women, whether it be even us men and young boys, when it comes to your HIV status and the sexual orientation and the law in Uganda, those two cannot be put in the same room. The moment they get into the same room, there's going to be a bigger fight. So as a nation, we need to fight stigma, shame, denial, discrimination, and eventually when we wash out this, then we will be able to facilitate the fight against HIV. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a hand here on this table.
Thank you. Specifically, thank you for sharing experience. My name is Isaac Mudindwa. I'm the MP for Gazi Municipality. Thank you for being bold and coming out to share what you go through. As a member of parliament, are you suggesting that we come up with a law to protect you, or you have something that you have documented as an association? You have an association of sex workers and you have demands that you have presented before parliament?
You will answer that after that. There was a hand. Yes, sir.
My name is Abaguma David. The Electoral Commission made a statement that actually I want some people to clarify on those who are naming here. Not that I'm completely not aware, but he talked of the law and the social norms being against the not in favoring the issues of I hear these other participants which they have raised. And without social norms, I don't know whether we remain with society to identify who we are. Norms shape society, and we remain a cohesive society because we have some social norms. Now, it's gone, but I want some people who are more knowledgeable than myself. How do we balance the social norms to remain a society, and then those who are being affected also have a space to live? Because we can't really rid ourselves of the social norms. It's difficult because when you remove them, you have no society, you have anything. So how do we balance the social norms and the legal framework, which I think we have been also dealing with, so that all of us have a space and we remain called the people or Ugandans or a community that we actually believes in some norms. Without them, we just like animals.
Thank you. Dora, I think you'll be able to respond to that. to that issue. Yes, ma'am.
Victoria Katamba, Judge Masaka. Thank you to all the presenters and the panelists we've had since the day started this morning. So I'll not be addressing current panel, but everything that I've had since the day started. And there's so much to respond to. I will particularly, my question is, revolves around assessing the impact of punitive laws. And UGANET has interacted with me at a personal level regarding that. Before I say that, I will say that I'm a person who is affected by HIV, AIDS, having lost my father, who I loved so much, very dearly. My role model, my inspiration, everything, in 1994. And so I know what stigma is. I know what isolation is. I watched, what was that movie called? It was something to do with Philadelphia. I watched a movie on somebody losing their job. And that's what my father experienced, losing a job because of your HIV status. That being said, I will also honor and recognize him for, as soon as finding out that he was HIV positive, protecting my mother. And when they tested together, one was a discordant couple. So my question revolves around that, really. That to what extent, and is related to the person who just asked a question. To what extent do we promote these rights and protect the rights of people who are in the society, who may be victimized or fall victim to those who, in the name of enjoying their rights, may violate the rights of others? I do not know if I make sense when I ask that question. For example, in my 1 year on the bench, I tried a father who violated his daughter knowingly, willfully, that term. That he knew his HIV status. He lived with many partners over the period, but they would all go away. And somebody, I think, mentioned when, I think it was Ron now saying, when the wife, the partner leaves the home, and then these young girls, maybe a maid is exposed violation of her rights. Now, this father then turned on to his daughter, who was about 7 years old, and repeated and turned that girl into a sex partner, and not just violated her dignity, her innocence, the core of her being human, but he also physically abused her. So he tormented her mentally, physically, emotionally, until she ran away one day to the LC court. And so even if I did not have that victim testify, but based on all of the medical evidence on record, the circumstances, the people she made first reports to, I convicted that person. One of the reasons was because not only did he violate his child's dignity, but he knowingly infected her with HIV. So how do we balance those things? How do you move me from my affective area and give me and empower me to be accepting of things that I have been raised in my 48 years to know that are not accepted of people as our norms, For example, when we hear stories of young boys forcefully being, by the way, society is more accepting of, from what I have heard, of people who are lesbians than they are of gays, because of what they perceive to be that sexual act to be. And I would beg to be corrected. That, having said all that, I know that nobody should be treated with indignity or dehumanized because of anything they have done, even though you perceive it to be wrong, because two wrongs do not make a right. And from my beliefs, that is why God came down. He said, I have come to seek and save the lost. so that he's an accepting person. He says, I will leave 99 righteous sheep and come for the one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judge Victoria, for that. All right. Do I have another second? I'll give each of you 1 minute, 1 minute. Yes, Afande, and then the last one, you'll have the final say. And Dora, prepare to make some of your reactions to this before I come back to the panel.
Thank you very much, moderator. I would also like to add a voice to what the magistrate has just said. Oh, sorry.
She's a judge, yeah.
My
Her
my
Lordship.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Victoria Katama. Yes.
According to the statistics that we have, the police statistics, we look at cases of defilement, rape, increasing every other year. And according to those statistics, the ones that have been victimized, or the most victims are women and girls. And I also know that to some extent, yes, charging someone or criminalizing HIV, like you've been saying, to them is violating one's rights. But I have a question. In most cases, when we are dealing with the perpetrators, at times the voice of the victims seems to go lost. And the acts do affect these women and girls. So how do we balance this? Do you ever think about the life of this victim and the effects that come with that sexual act? Because we have so many girls and women that have reached out to us, and really they have gone through so many issues, and they have contracted the HIV, but they're not being taken care of. So how do you balance this? Yes, it has been, HIV has been criminalized, but we know the effects that come with it, and on these young, innocent women and girls. So how do you go about that? Then secondly, I would like to know from the presenters, the two presenters, you talked about your research and your findings, but I seem not to have seen more of the recommendations when it comes to side for the police. What is it exactly that you're trying to correct? And then when it comes to the laws, what is it exactly that you want? Do you want the law to be amended so that we cure the issues that you're raising? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have the final say, sir. Meanwhile, Council Jude and Council Kabanda, kindly prepare to make some your responses to the issues that have been raised.
Yeah, thank you very much, Solomon. My name is Francis Chakulaka. I'm a public health professional, and I'm really glad to be here. Two quick ones come up. For a long time, we medicalized HIV, AIDS, and AIDS management, and the way we do things. And surprisingly, I don't know how many medical people are here now, which is a plus for UGANET, because we want to take it to that next level. So I want to thank UGANET for organizing this. This is very, very, very important. There is nothing medical about people's health. We need to take it out there. So when they say a lawyer, I was in the session yesterday, and one wonderful Professor Ben was talking about these things with a lot of passion. I felt very nice about it. I think we need to take it next level. Let's see everybody address this concern because it's here and with us. The other one is about what I call professional stigma. I have been in the profession for a long time, about 26 years, and we do write proposals and grants. I'm telling you the truth. I sit on a number of boards now, but allowing our staff to even come up with a grant that has LGT somewhere is a big problem. You would even sit and say, I don't think we are approving for this to go on. There are 1,001 grants going on. There are 1,001 people coming in to run and try to support people, especially what we call the key populations. Because right now, the HIV pandemic is being driven by the key populations, mostly. But even when their resources try and help them, the mainstream people who are involved in helping are not even willing to touch it. So I think this is very, very, very positive, and we need to take it to another level so that people can know that these are our children, these are our people, and we need to give them support. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll make reactions in just a minute each, and then I'll also give my panelists to answer to those issues that have been raised, and then I can close it up. Dora, do you want to go first?
Thank you very much. Since I've been given an opportunity, I will say even what has not been asked. Number one, I want to thank the panelists, especially those that have gotten the courage to share your story. Thank you so much. It is not easy to put you there and we then have to go through your story and make it a case. But your courage, your willingness, we thank you and we respect you for that. Quickly on the issue of criminalization, why are we, does it seem to say that this advocacy, that drive is to say that people should be on the rampage and not care for those they are infecting? With due respect, we would be very wrong, we would be very unfair. That is not what we are pushing. We call in the same vein for responsibility, for people to Canon Gideon will tell you the very good line he always uses, that ever since I got HIV, I have never passed it to anybody. Part of positive living is to be responsible and not to pass it on. And our advocacy against criminalization is to show that usually what the law has intended to happen is not what happens. Of the 3 cases, the video we showed there, and even Namumiru, the first story that was highlighted in the research, all those people went through the arrest, the vilification of the media, the pain and the crying. But at the end of the legal process, it was proved they never infected anybody. All their victims are very negative, but for them, their lives have had totally changed and never to be the same again. So what happens when the law is in place? It serves a different purpose for what it was meant to be. The lives that die along the litigation process, the many years of going through the court, the cameras that are always on them, you can imagine the pain that they go through. For the case of the first 16 young men, later on they had to be released. DPP had to say there are no charges against you. But it had taken over 60 days for them, having gone sick, hungry, shamed, the work of shame that Henry has talked about. It was incredible. I want to believe that all of us here, indeed, when we see indignity, and I want to thank you, Your Lordship, for mentioning it, that although we are on the journey of understanding these issues, is that when you see indignity, you call it out. When you see violation, you call it out. For all the cases that we have seen, for example, the issue of sex work, in particular in Masindi, when they were mobilized around that area, about 120 sex workers were put in prison because those who were in the road by children, the easier ones who rounded up were the sex workers. So the count came to over 120. Patricia, if she had an opportunity, she would say more. And you would see that the ones the law easily got were the sex workers. But we know that many people were in bars violating the laws, but they were not arrested. So the weaker person, the one who has no voice, is easily beaten and easily given the punishment. So that is where the law puts people at risk, and then it becomes hard to really push out, to pull out who you're meaning. In this particular respect, I'm going to request Canon Gideon to be able to add for me the issue of molarity. He knows so well how to explain it. I know we are all on a journey. We are not asking for change of mind on these issues, but while we keep our morals, while we keep our deep beliefs, could we respect human rights? Human rights is like an apple. When you choose that to eat that one apple, you don't choose which side and which human right. A human being is a human being. It doesn't, TV doesn't define you, your status doesn't define you, but you find that the weakest, and it can all be exemplified
violations looked like. The lawyers that supported, especially the sex work community and the LGBT community, are represented in the room. Patricia Chimela was the lawyer between most of those cases. So I want to recognize Hero and your leadership, Patricia. Thank you so much for having gotten all these people out of prisons, and they have a case to talk about today. Then earlier on in the presentation of Mr. Kabanda, he mentioned how people went without medicine. And I want to recognize two people in particular here. Dr. Watiti has gone out. I wish he could listen to this. He's still in? No, he's moved. Dr. Watiti was one of those that was taking medicines to people in their homes, and Kresh Muliru moved the whole of lockdown, distributing medicines to people. That was an act of love, of courage, and of community. We thank you all for your service. Could I ask Canon to help me on the question I couldn't answer?
Societal norms and morals.
Mukul moderator, here I think one of the outcomes that could come from this dialogue is to allow the questions asked by Judge Katamba and Professor Baguma to constitute another dialogue. Because those are the realities of why we are having challenges. If we can unpack what moral values, what social values are we talking about, then we would have gone another mile. For example, Judge talked about salvation, which is important because Africa is one of the most religious and spiritually oriented continents in the world, but it is the most sick when it comes to HIV and AIDS. So we must interrogate ourselves from there and say, how come that we love God most, and then we are suffering? Are there things we are saying wrongly? Are there things we are believing wrongly? Are there things we are doing inaccurately? We need to interrogate that. So when she says salvation, I understand, because in this AIDS struggle, there are two types of people that need to be saved. One, those of us who have too much power, and we are using it to oppress and intimidate and punish those without. And then there are those who have too little power, and they must be saved to have some power, to have some human dignity around them. So I think the social values, Professor Obama is back. I loved your question. And I'm saying we could host, you and Judge Katamba could co-host the next dialogue on that critical point. Because once we do that, we are gone. We are better to go. Mr. Moderator, one of the things that is very challenging is when a Director General of Uganda of any AIDS commission in the countries that are most impacted is showing religious leaders, look, we have a big problem. The highest infections are among injecting drug users, men having sex with men, commercial sex workers. And then the religious leaders, so what did you expect? Those must be high unless they change their behavior. Now we need interrogation around issues of whether what I describe as right must necessarily translate into what is safe, and whether what you call wrong must necessarily be unsafe. So these are things that we need to interrogate. Then the people who violate others and give them AIDS and give them other diseases, are they refusing to be good people, or are they failing? That is another area of interrogation. So morality is and maybe finally, I don't know if the judges here and others in the court can help us to understand how the course on jurisprudence has engaged with HIV and AIDS, because the laws you get as a country depend on the cultural, social, and religious norms you have in the country. So we need to interrogate what are people learning? What is the source of these laws that are here? Because why come that in some areas the laws are different, in other areas the laws are different? Why is it that some people push for the law of love and others push for the love of law?
Thank you, Canon Professor Gideon. Thank you very much for speaking to us. All right, you want to have a final say? Okay, you got it. And then we'll get, there's a question that came to you, and then we'll do a quick roundup, and then we can finish. Great.
Thank you. My name is Owino Paul. I'm a magistrate. We thank UGANET for organizing this dialogue session at Kalangala, and according to the statistics you've had, that people living with HIV, the number seems to be so high in Kalangala. We have been discussing about discrimination, and we appreciate the dynamics of people living with HIV and AIDS, then tuberculosis. I find a few observations from our discussion that discrimination is bad, especially at different levels where we access or interact with this person. We need to practice reasonable accommodation and not to treat people who are living with HIV as different or unpopular citizens within the society. However, you realize that, as the professor was stating it properly, justice is administered in accordance with the norms and aspirations of the people. And we still have a challenge whether such a dialogue would be so relevant to the elites only, or you can explain it properly, somebody who is illiterate, a common man to understand it. Because we are in a society where you realize that we are composed of different tribal and ethnic settings. The norms and accepted values in Uganda may not be the same in Tesla, in Tororo, in Ankole, and in Kabale. How are we going to look at this? Can we have a uniform database of norms and values? We have been educated on LGBTI and sexual orientation. How are we going to balance this with the values of the various ethnic groups that we have in Uganda? And how will they appreciate the message as we are doing? We have to look at it from a legal perspective, that the norm and value should not be repugnant to the law. We may also be looking at a comparative analysis from different countries, but Uganda has its own constitution and laws for which we have to abide. I seek to be educated by counsel who submitted on criminality of people living with HIV/AIDS. When you talk about prostitution, I see it as a crime under the Penal Code Act. Have the courts or the law pronounced it itself? I think the message would be that when people are arrested, they should not be discriminated upon because they are living with HIV. And all other rights of accused should follow. But it is a little mix-up. How do we go about with the people who are doing some kind of work which under our law is a crime? And what about the person who buys them? Do you only proceed against the seller and not the buyer? Because the crime would not be complete unless both the buyer and the seller appear before. Otherwise, the elements of the offense would not come out so clear. Thank you.
Interesting one. All right, let me invite the two counsels who made the presentations to give their reactions on the issues that have been raised. Counsel Kabanda. You're welcome. Then Council Jude Bianca, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I think mine is it comes back to the discussion, and I'm very happy to have listened to you, Justice Victoria. And many times we have these discussions, and they will never end. The bottom line should be that whether we like it or not, we must observe and respect dignity of everyone, the human rights of everyone. If we don't do that, we are in for big trouble. If we do not respect the rights of the people, even those whom we think are socially not upright, then anytime that will get back to us. There is no point in discriminating or beating or any other kind of violation of a person because of their sex orientation or because of their status being HIV or having TB. I'm listening in, and I know that our societies have been constructed differently. If my parish priest listen to me today, they may even don't think that I'm their Catholic, but I am a Catholic, but I know that the person I serve as Lord is a champion of defending the weakest in society. Remember, anyway, let us not go into that. But as a lawyer, I'm also reminded that our Constitution, under Article 20, calls upon all of us to respect, promote, and uphold rights of everyone. The government, but also us as individuals, we must respect those rights. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Judge, I wanted to listen in from Council Jude. I think many of these questions were coming to you. Okay, I've been told that he has stepped out.
Sorry, Jude is out, but we have been working together.
Okay.
Yes. Jeannie Namuga from JB Mukama and Company Advocate. I'll answer to the police officer who spoke about the recommendations that we make. You talked about the constitutional petition that calls for amendment of the laws on criminalization that is in the Court of Appeal. So that is one of the recommendations that we make in the study. And the recommendations, we also make the recommendations to different stakeholders, courts of judicature, we make recommendations to the DPP, to the police, to the prisons, and specifically to the police that you asked. One of the recommendations is training of police officers in implementation of the law and handling persons that are living with HIV and TB, because that's one of the challenges that was pointed out, where these people are ill-treated in the prisons and the police. So that is one of the recommendations we make for police officers to be trained. Then also the police to adhere to professional standards when undertaking investigations, because that is a challenge that came up for most of the investigations. There are loopholes in them, mostly for people living with HIV and TB. Then we also found out that there are no clinics at some of the police stations for persons living with TB and HIV, and also the infrastructure. So we called upon government to construct more infrastructures. For example, TB, when it's contagious. So if they are mixed with people that are not infected with TB, definitely the infections are likely to spread. So those are some of the recommendations that we make. And Patricia here will answer to the other question.
Thank you so much. My name is Patricia Kimura. I am a lawyer. I work with Kira. I just want to respond to your worship about aspects of sex work and criminalization. So, your worship, you asked about aspects of criminalization and also why probably the buyers are not criminalized, and that is where the biases of the law come from. We are all aware that some of the laws that we have are really fake, and really they do not pass the constitutional test. When you look at the law on prostitution, it's very vague because it only criminalizes the women. But also when you look at the evidence that you are supposed to put on table, it is quite difficult to bring the evidence that someone has been habitually offering herself for sexual gratification, and then you have to bring probably the customer. And that is why in my legal practice, there are very few of those cases that we have handled. And what is usually done is that most of the sex workers are charged under the alternative petty offenses, which are also in themselves very vague. And what is the result of this? We see that because of their vagueness, the law enforcement officers usually use them to, violate the rights of sex workers. We've had the scenarios where sex workers have told us that if you don't have probably what to pay for your freedom, then you have to open your central bank and give what is there. That means usually they sometimes give in sex for their freedom. Quite a lot of violations, many are detained. I handled a case in 2013 where sex workers had been arrested and taken at the police station. And when they reached there, the officer told them that I'm going to teach you a lesson, and from today you stop doing that sex work. So what happened is that the sex worker got platoons and inserted them in the private parts of the sex worker. Now, if IRAF wasn't there to ensure that this sex worker also gets probably justice, then what happens? Because this person has really gone overboard beyond what they are supposed to do. The same thing that happened to COSEF, because we were the lawyers for the COSEF people. People were banned. There's a lot of evidence, videography. In this day and era, you get people and tie them like those days of slavery on ropes. And then you're taken to prison and they want to ban those parts that they think are very sinful.
All right.
So criminalization brings more harm than good, in my summary. And countries, linking it to HIV, countries that have decriminalized actually have low incidences of HIV among key populations.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give you a whole round of applause, everyone who participated. I want to give my panelists 20 seconds each to make their final submissions, and then I call on the next panel. But first, you're supposed to answer a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. The question was about, do you have a network of sex workers? Do you have the internal network of sex workers organizations? UNESCO?
I think, Honorable, this was your question that you raised. You were answering it, so I thought you'd better.
We have a network of we have a network, you get a network of sex work organizations. Our offices are in Mengo. We have very many member organizations that have registered with us and made us proud that they are able to, implement different activities on a national level. Then also you talked about what do we ask parliamentarians to do. We do not only ask parliamentarians, but we ask everyone in this room to support us, put up a voice to decriminalize sex work. We cannot do it alone. We can do it as a collective, and that is where our discussions come from. As we are concluding, Solomon, allow me to say this. Ladies and gentlemen and others, we need to shape a sharp object to make it alert to equality and equity for everyone, regardless of our status, regardless of our sexual orientation, regardless of our gender identity, gender equality and equity in Uganda.
Thanks a lot. Rona, your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Solomon. And I'll only have my closing remarks with sharing what we've had to do with our call center.
Rona, can you come closer to the mic? It's getting a little.
Sorry. We registered a total number of 734 cases since our call center came active on the 25th of May. And we need to note that out of the 734 callers, 486 on the other side were females and 248 were males. And specifically out of these cases, 381 cases were gender-based violence cases. And out of these, we find that 270 affected were women, and then the others, 111, were males. So our call center is still open, our shelter is still open. We are here to serve, and we thank you so much for honoring our invite. Looking forward to a bigger challenge, and working with you will make it easier. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe Solomon, I would just I want to appreciate Hira, Sehad, and Doreen Chitonjo, who sits on our board at Chile. So thank you so much for supporting us to access legal services. And we are looking forward to work with UGANET in the more years to come for sex workers to access legal services.
All right, Fiona. Fiona, somebody on mic. Okay. Yani erinya? Okay.
akoze kinene nnyo gye tuli alina omutima omwagazi eri abantu basikyangu tusembera ffe naye yafuna obuvumu najja gye tuli naffe netufuna kaleegi natudda mu bantu twebaza Comparative yebaza tukolamu omulimu omulungi nemugayi
Amina. Tuyanze. Owaayi Henry Mukibi. Ebyo your closing remarks.
Yes. Me, ever since we left prison, because I was among those also in prison, we've registered new 10 cases through our ATM. Those are HIV positive people. So we decided to give them free treatment, and right now I'm requesting for allies to come and be join hands so that we support the population through strengthening our peer-to-peer support network. Thank you very much. And another thing is that I thank Iraq for rescuing us from prison. That prison was hell. Indeed, we came from hell. Thank you very much, Iraq.
All right, thank you. Again, a round of applause to my panelists. Thank you very much. Please go and take your seats. Thank you very much for being courageous enough to share your different stories. We really are grateful for your time. Unfortunately, we've really run out of time. So the next, which is supposed to be a panel, I'm going to give each of the people who are supposed to be on the panel 3 minutes to make their remarks, and then I can officially close this event. First, I want to invite Lillian Moreko to give her remarks in 3 minutes. Lillian is joining us online, so she will be speaking via Zoom. Lillian, thank you so much for joining us for the second high-level national dialogue on HIV, the law, and health. Let's bring you in to give your remarks. Welcome. All right, as we fix Lillian, let me invite, we have someone from the lawyers pushing for justice, Paul Muchili, Council Paul Muchili. We kindly invite you to come and make your remarks in 3 minutes as we try to look for Lillian Moreko. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Solomon. Your Lordships, Your Worship, honorable members of Parliament, and protocol observed. I'm Paul Mochile. I've been introduced a law in private practice and also in academia, specifically LBC and UCU. I've been given 3 minutes to present whatever I'm supposed to present. I'll be very brief. Good enough, my colleagues Jude and Mr. Kavanda were here and have addressed most of the issues. My theme is lawyers pushing for justice. I didn't like much the word pushing, but as used in the context, we are trying to look at the role of the bar in as far as HIV/AIDS is concerned. I'll not go so much into what has been said. I'll specifically look at the challenges we are facing and the role of lawyers in as far as this is concerned. I'll use reference to a few cases that we've handled concerning HIV/AIDS. Apparently, there are about 4 decisions now at a high court level. It was a struggle because at least 2 of them started from magistrate court, and we had to take them to a higher level so that we can create some precedents in place. And this is helping us because it is creating good jurisprudence in as far as litigation and adjudication of HIV/AIDS is concerned. The first challenge we are facing is stigma and discrimination in HIV/AIDS litigation and adjudication. That is specifically in the courtroom. My brother Kavanda is aware what he went through while handling Rose Namubiru's case at Uganda Road. It was a serious struggle. It is still happening, and this is something both the bar and the bench have to really fight. I don't know why it becomes a very serious issue when an offender is HIV positive. Regardless of the offense, there are even serious offenders who have committed serious offenses. It is never an issue. But when it is involving an HIV positive person, it is always a serious issue in terms of investigation. Our officer from police was asking which areas do you need us to help you. You can even find these people isolated at police stations just because of their HIV status. In the courtroom, procedures are changed when they are dealing with HIV positive persons, which is not something good because it is portraying something very different in as far as adjudication is concerned. Then we have public perception about HIV/AIDS litigation and adjudication. The attitude of the public has also been very negative. We are almost attacked in Rose Namubiru's case at Uganda Road for only one reason, defending her in court, where she was still presumed innocent. So there's been a lot of negative public perception to judge and convict an accused before even the trial process. Even the lawyer, you become an offender for merely defending an HIV positive person. So there is a way the public court convicts before even the trial. And you go through a series of hostility while prosecuting these cases, which sometimes demotivate, frustrate, and if you are not strong enough as a lawyer, you may even withdraw from the case because of the fear of the public attack. The other is an area of judicial activism. I'll make reference to a few cases that have been handled, and I will, with due respect, upload the decision of Justice Mubiru, Stephen Mubiru, in Commonwealth Livia versus Uganda. That decision is available on Yuli. It is also available in law reports. Justice Mubiru has given a very leading guide to deal with HIV positive cases. Some people have been asking. When you look at his decision, he goes in as far as even interpreting what we mean by viral load and intention to transmit. That if somebody's viral load is low, can you prove intention? He is trying to bring a mix of scientific studies with the law. So it is something that can interest most of the judicial officers if we do look at that. I'm being mind the time. Then the other concern would be adjudication dialogue. The Supreme Court in the recent case of Professor Sempe and Professor Juka against the AG has tried to interest us to advocate for adjudication dialogue between the court and the bar in some of these cases, whereby solutions can be created without going into much nitty-gritties of the legal process and the challenges. Then funding legal aid clinics is also something we need to look into. Our magistrate has been crying about Kalangala, and it's a very serious concern, whereby access to justice is almost terrible. No law firm exists there. That is saying 98% of the people there are living with HIV. So how do they access justice? This is something that we need really to work on. Then prison outreach, which Jude talked about, is also a very critical concern. I have a decision of Justice Sekana in the matter I handled of Kemigisha Adrin against Uganda, where he's noting that as far as state was arguing that there is no evidence that the prison conditions are catering for HIV positive persons, court was of the view that as long as somebody is HIV positive, his or her treatment should be in a special way. And the court considered the applicant's HIV status as an exceptional circumstance and granted bail. In another decision of Justice Masal Mosene, that is in Uganda versus Sergeant Driver Nkojo Solomon, Justice Masal Mosene used the HIV positive status of the accused as a mitigating factor and reduced the sentence of murder to 18 years imprisonment. This is the judicial activism I'm talking about that we need to interest in light of person living with HIV. Someone, I think I can stop here in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. May I now invite Lillian Moreko to come through and speak to us in 3 minutes. Lillian is going to be speaking on Zoom. You're welcome, Lillian.
No, you kataleka kwesa devices bid. Aka kwesa 7 laptop.
Yeah. Lillian, we can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead and make your presentation in 3 minutes. You're welcome, Lillian. Lillian is the Executive Director of the International Committee of Women Living with HIV/AIDS. I hope I got that right. Lillian, you're welcome.
Let's see video. She's using 2 devices. Let her get off 1 device. That's why you're seeing her 2 accounts. Which take care? Ojaba. Chovola baina eko ha Sophia vira ko eko. Ochirabe.
No, ne waba nga talina bbiri wabako omulala wano.
Let her get off 1 account.
This is on the 1 account.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear, but we can't see you. So,
okay, you're about to see me then if you can hear me.
Okay. Please
Hello.
Please open up your video. And
is it okay now?
Yes. All right. Go ahead and make your presentation, Lillian. You have 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Solomon, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, and the audience here is listening to you, ma'am. And now we can see you. We can hear you and see you.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. So I can start now. Thank you very much, everybody. Allow me to say thank you to UGANET and team for organizing this important dialogue. And I can see that we are at another level from where we were last year. but also allow me again to say thank you to our partners and to the donors that are putting resources into this. I feel where I'm seated that it is giving us the results that are desired. And having been at the first dialogue and having attended since the beginning of this session in the morning, I think I'm confident that we are moving towards the right direction. And I just want to say that I want to add my voice to Canon's call that I think moving forward, we need to move to another level where we have the key people join hands with us in organizing this dialogue so that we are now beginning to look at real issues that are coming out that probably from where we are seated, we may not be seeing as people who have been in this for long. But I can also appreciate the voices, the new voices that we've had. I would like to appreciate the voice from the judge, that I think that is what we need at this moment in time. And from the community that I represent, I think what I see as the big issue that is still remaining is the question of when we start looking at this issue from where we are seated. And since morning, some of the voices that I've been hearing speak to the words like them, they, us. I think we need to move from that level to start speaking as we. If we associate with the issues that we are talking about, if we are able to associate with stigma and discrimination, if we are able to associate with human rights violations and how they impact on us as individuals, as a country, as citizens, then we'll be able to come up with the real solutions that speak to the challenges that people are faced with, but also to treat people with humility and dignity. I think one of the things that we did not learn from, and I know we don't say much about it, but I want to bring it to this August House today, is the story that I had when I had just been diagnosed with HIV. And that was the story of the bishop who did not want any use of condoms until when his own child was diagnosed with HIV. And his voice and language and call to action changed then. And we don't want anybody to be getting to that level for us to have good policies, to have good programs and decisions. So we need to be looking at those examples to help us come up with policies and decisions that really look at everybody as equal and everybody as, in the same wave. And then that takes me to the question of, again, what Canon talked about, that it is important that, yes, we respect the laws, we respect the constitution of the country, but I think we need to ask ourselves a question: whose constitution is it? If it is our constitution, and the people are saying that there are issues around how this constitution is being used, but also how power is being used. So it takes me to the point that if I was in the position of power, as Lillian, as a woman, as an activist, as a woman living with HIV, probably the decisions I would take would be different from the decisions that our leaders are taking. And I don't want to say that we all have to be there, but I think we need to challenge our leaders, the people that have power and authority, to think beyond the power that they have and the authority that has been given to them. Because for all this long, 35 years, we've been talking about some of the things that we are talking about today, but does it make sense to people who are in positions of power? Does it make sense to people who are seated where they are seated, where we can also be? So I think the question that we need to be challenging is that it doesn't matter. You can be a member of parliament today. You can be sitting on that bench where you're facing people who are coming to you, whom we are calling innocent people, whom we are calling victims. But I think it can be different if we turned ourselves to be where they are seated and they are facing us, we are facing that bench. So I think we need to get to that point where we realize that everybody is innocent in this world, and particularly in our country. And therefore, we need to change the language also. And the moment we change the language, we'll be better people, we'll have better policies, better decisions, and our response is going to be better. That it cannot continuously be innocent people, innocent women. Because, for example, we have the HIV and AIDS law in place because the members of parliament that we interacted with for quite a long period of time, telling them that this law cannot protect women, and they insisted this was to prevent innocent women who are being raped, who are being beaten by their husbands. And at the end of the day, now the law is catching up with the innocent women that the law was meant to protect. So my call to action is, let's put all ourselves in situations and in positions where we are being led, where we are the recipients of the services of the law that we are talking about, and together we can come up with better policies, better programs. We can have funding that goes to the issues that matter to people, and I can assure you that we shall have a better response. So thank you very much, and I look forward to 2021 dialogue that is really going to be looking at those issues that Canon and the member of parliament and the judge have critically put on table, so that we move the conversation from the we and them to how do we together approach this issue, and how do we come up with better policies, programs, laws, and how do we make the environment favorable for everybody in all their diversity, so that we are able to address the challenges and problems that we are faced with. Thank you very much.
Lillian Moreko, let's give her a round of applause. Lillian, thank you very much. Lillian is the Executive Director of the International Community of Women Living with HIV and AIDS, speaking to us. We'll give our next speaker, and these are the legislators. He's going to be having a voice from the legislators. The Honorable Sozi Mulindwa, Member of Parliament for Lugazi Municipality, will be representing the legislature. You're welcome, the Honorable Sozi Mulindwa.
Thank you so much, Solomon Surang. We as Parliament, or before I go that side, let me thank the AIDS support organization, UGANET, UNDP, Uganda Insurance Company, and other stakeholders for partaking in this second high-level national dialogue on HIV, health, and the law. On the part of the law, that's where we as parliamentarians come in. My name is Isaac Nindo Sozi, Member of Parliament for Lugazi Municipality. Parliament, our roles are specifically very, very few in this. The roles we play as Parliament, under Article 1 of our Constitution, we do representation. We bring in the views from our people, and also we take back what we've discussed in the House back to the donors. It's both up and down. The second role we do as Parliament is under Article 79 of the Constitution, which brings us on board on the issue of the law. Under Article 79 of the Constitution, we make laws for the good governance of our country. And this takes us direct to the HIV and AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 2014, which most of you have been discussing about here. I want to specifically thank UGANET for the last 2 weeks. They engaged Parliament, though we are very busy in campaigns now. It's not easy to take off time during campaigns now to come and engage in such dialogue. But there are members of Parliament here who are present, who have taken off that time and at least contribute. I want to recognize my colleagues, Honorable Joel, you can stand up for recognition. And then we have Honorable Mire from Talija, and then Honorable Beatrice Wachimai from Nzungu. We really appreciate members for your time to participate in this. Let me go direct onto this HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 2014. Somebody said, I heard from one council who said that laws are vague. I was really concerned. I want to make it very clear. Laws are not vague. Legislation is a consultative process and it provides for improvement. Before we come up with a law, we consult all stakeholders. So when somebody comes up at this particular moment and says laws are vague, it under vetting the role of Parliament. We do it in a consultative approach and we do it collectively. Another person mentioned here that we don't need this law. Actually, it was the council also. I'm surprised how lawyers come up and they say it was on discrimination specifically. This act did not come to discriminate. The objective of the HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act was not to stigmatize, but to provide, I want to read verbatim, it was provided for the prevention and control of HIV/AIDS, including protection, counseling, testing, care of persons living with AIDS, rights and obligations of persons living with HIV/AIDS, and above all, to establish the HIV and AIDS Trust Fund, which is not yet activated. Actually, I want to call upon members to ensure that we continue to fight for the push to activate for this HIV and AIDS Trust Fund, including the contingency fund. Parliament, we do budgeting, we do appropriation under Article 156 of the Constitution, and we also monitor public resources. But they are very essential funds that we provided for in the Constitution and other acts of Parliament that have not yet been activated, especially this one of the HIV and AIDS Trust Fund, as per this act. One police officer, actually she has left, she posed a very good question. She said, are we here to propose for the amendment? UGANET, one question that we need to answer together. Let's be specific. If it is the HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act that we need to amend, or the Public Health Act, we need to propose very categorically and say we need to provide, for example, here in this section 41 and section 43 of this HIV Act, the attempted transmission of HIV and the intentional transmission of HIV, where it provides that a person who attempts to transmit HIV to another person commits a felony and shall on conviction be liable to a fine of not more than 12 currency points or imprisonment of not more than 5 years or a combination. And then section 43 talks about the intentional transmission of HIV. Here, a person who willfully and intentionally transmits HIV to another person commits an offense and on conviction shall be liable to a fine of not more than 120 currency points or to imprisonment for a term of not more than 10 years or a combination. Yes, criminalizing, when you look at the act, the intention was to deter. We need to safeguard the community. Yes, there are rights that we need to push for, but we cannot simply do away with the law 100%. This is a consultative process that we need to consult further, especially with the court practitioners, religious leaders, and other people, such that we come up with a better stand on the law. One counsel averted that where the victim is positive, how will you determine who infected the other? Scientists at least say that there is a window period when somebody has slept with a person who has HIV. If I slept with you yesterday, and then let's say police takes action the following day, chances are high that the person who was negative within a day can still remain negative. We need to be very clear on that. And before I invite her lordship to come and close, you have moved ahead. One council talked about 200 cases, and so far from the presentation, we looked at only 2 cases that were presented. If we have those 200 plus, we need to make a thorough petition before Parliament, and then we can amend and work together. Why we came up with the HIV and HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act in 2014 was to deter, not only actually in Uganda, but even in Kenya, all the East African states, they have this act. we need to be very, very clear of the reasons before we move to amend. Finally, the young lady from Uganda Network of Sex Workers Organization, she talked of, even, I want to remind you that you're operating illegally. We don't have a law as per now to protect you with this organization of yours, Uganda Network of Sex Workers Organization. Not in a negative way, but you have very good ideas when you say we need to professionalize the industry. Yes, sex work has been legalized in other countries internationally. We have, I think, France is one of them. Netherlands is the other country. So prepare your petition properly, in that you make a very good case. Come and present before Parliament, petition the Speaker. We need to professionalize the industry. Sex workers are there, and they have customers, and the customers are coming from our community. We are the customers of the sex workers. They are not operating alone. So I want to agree with her that let us professionalize the sex work industry, make your submissions properly to the Speaker, and then we come up with the law on this, in that police stops fighting you on the streets and others. Yes, now I'm concluding. UGANET'S, last week we were in Entebbe, you presented on the same thing. I want to thank you so much because you have really labored to sensitize us on how we should improve on the law. There was this professor in the law, professor of the law, who averred that for a case to be considered as a criminal offense, there must be the element of mindset and then the element of the act being an offense itself. When you look at HIV/AIDS, it is this act that makes it an offense, right? You call it strict liability, those of you in the law. It is this act that makes it an offense. The mindset, it will be very hard for a person to prove that this person proved deliberately transmitted HIV to the other person. We need to know at what point does a person, tell that I'm positive, and then the other person was not positive, and then the evidence you're going to adduce before court. Some things we need to be very clear. You need to talk to my HIV Youth Club, in that they can give them at least some hope, some courage to stand, because we always meet at my home in hiding. People still carry that stigma. Before I invite you, Lordship, Justice Katamba, to close this, I want to appreciate that court you moved ahead. My magistrates in Lugazi, she has helped me a lot. The former one, Aisha Mukira, she has helped me a lot in dealing with. We are using this law to deal with a lot of cases that I cannot go in detail now in respect of what we call the Patients' Rights Act. I now invite you to close this officially. You're senior on the panel. Okay, sorry. I understand those issues. Thank you.
Who said that the law is vague? I think maybe you misunderstood it, but it's a fact. Because even if you do well, even if you do your laws very well, there are always gaps. And I'll just give you an example. The ICC statute, when they made that law, we had just a few days, I think, to the conference, international conference. How could Uganda hold such a conference without having a law? So sometimes the conditions in which you make the laws, legislate, also affect the way, the thoroughness of the law that you come up with. If you gave us just to maybe a month, the lawyers who are here can come up with all the gaps in that law if you care. But at least take it in good faith and know that not all the laws are perfect, but they are made for that time because they are needed. If we are to look at the COVID law, for example, now, I'm telling you, we'll find so many things. So,
For example, how when you thought about deliberate transmission, why didn't you think about deliberate acquisition?
That is why I said we provide for continuous improvement. We need to support.
Yeah, so that's a gap already.
I understand that. Okay. All right. Okay, you can take over. We can not exhaust that discussion now. What we need to know is that legislation, coming up with the law, is a consultative process. We go through various stages before it is passed. And once one has very good ideas, we normally advertise in the media to invite the public to make their submissions.
Thank you to UGANET and the supporters of this second high-level national dialogue on HIV, health and the law, the AIDS Support Organization, UNDP, Uganda RE, and all the partners who made this day possible. I am honored and privileged to be closing the second high-level national dialogue on HIV, health and the law. What came to me after all had been said and done is the verse that says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." Many times, when we do not know, we come and operate and respond, react from a place of insecurity. When we know, we have power, we are conscientized, and make decisions from a place of knowledge and not ignorance and fear and insecurity. And learning doesn't end. That's my mantra. That's my philosophy. That we are always learning and unlearning certain things and replacing them with good things. I liked it when Lillian Moreka said that we must change our language. It is not about them. It is we. It is me. The personal is political. It is what happens in our personal and private spaces and experiences that is connected to the larger social and political structures. And so I am happy to say today that we have made commitments from this dialogue, and we've committed to creating a legal and social environment where everyone thrives irrespective of their status or orientation. I know again, some of the participants, especially Vivian, said some of the things that were said 35 years ago are still being said, but let us not lose heart. We have made steps. So many people have taken courage, and it is because of their courage, the courage of those people who came out and first said something, Phile Bongole Lutaya, the Reverend Cannon, the young boy Katz, it is Katamba of the Gabe clan, then I am his mother. We have made progress, and we cannot undermine or understate the progress that we have made today. As judicial officers, and I believe I speak for police, civil society organization, religious leaders, development partners, the leaders, I will call them the shepherds, the good shepherds. We have the role and responsibility to move this further than it is today. The public has entrusted us with the responsibility to make a better world, and so we must.
Thank you to everyone who's participated today. To those who are online, we commit on behalf of the people we serve, the judiciary in my capacity. We've already been appreciated that we are already making judge-made law. You saw that judgment in IS, a juvenile offender versus Uganda by Justice Mobiru. So we are already committed to improve the world so that everybody is treated with humanity and grace and respect. Because our Creator treats us like that. He does not see some children as different from others. And so we must judge not, and we shall not be judged when it comes to issues of morality and correcting those things that we think may be wrong. Judicial activism is, as I've already said, is the way we're going. We put on our gender lenses. We always put on our human rights lenses as we make our decision. This is the second of its kind, and I am sure that there will be many more. Human rights are not negotiable. They're inalienable. You were born a human being. You were born with the Spirit of God in you. He breathes His life in you. And so you are God, and that cannot be removed from you. And I thank you very, very much for affording us this space, this time to have this most important discussion, conversation. I thank you very much.
The standing ovation, Your Lordship, was in your honor. We have not heard any wiser words. We have not heard any gracious words. We have not heard more comforting words to the group, the community that is within this room, but the community that is online. You've been the highlight of our dialogue to even receive that promise from you. We thank you, Your Lordship. Thank you very much. Friends, we've come to the end of our meeting. Your patience has been exceptional. Thank you for sitting through. We've staffed you. It's 2:30 and we thought we'd finish at 1. So thank you for giving us 1.5 hours that beyond what we asked for. We want to thank you all, the key dignitaries. You're all key dignitaries. By the time we pleaded with you to come, it's because we knew you were going to add a lot of value to this meeting. Madame Maureen, you came after we had given introduction, but I would like the House to know that we had a Senior Commissioner of Police, Family and Child Protection Unit. Thank you so much for being here with us. And your very close colleague as well, our dear friend. We've been in the middle of the night fighting for women and rescuing them. Thank you for always having our back. We are seeing that on the line, we had UGANET'S. Thank you for keeping through. We had Dr. Isip of the TP's program. We had Linda from Ministry of Health. Dr. Vali Dawa, thank you, Ministry of Health AIDS Control Program, for keeping on the line. The Uganda Cares, thank you, Mr. Edie, for sitting through all these hours on your laptop. Thank you so much, Henry, for attending this dialogue. The PEPFAR team, we had 2 colleagues, doctors from PEPFAR, that attended this. We want to appreciate you. We want to appreciate CDC. We could see a number of you on the call, and thank you for not giving up. Thank you, Awak and Maclean. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for being on the call. We appreciate all of you, our friends, for giving us time. Dorothy from International Community of Women Living with HIV, thank you for being here and contributing to this meeting. Your contributions in the chat are going to be part of this report, and we shall be reading it properly at our third high-level national dialogue next December 2021. May we remain healthy and strong and report better progress when we meet next. Thank you so much. Lunch is served. You're going to receive your coupons and you go to the lunch area.